Hello, welcome to another edition of Coz's Corner video. I'm Jerry Cosby, the host of this marvelous show, and I'm blessed to be able to interview some very, very interesting people and talk about their businesses. Today we are in the home of Kennedy Tank and Manufacturing. Am I correct? Is that the title?
That's correct.
And on East Sumner Avenue, just east of Madison Avenue. It's been in business for many, many years, and this is Pat Kennedy. Welcome to Coz's Corner.
Hi, Jerry. Welcome.
Tell us a little of the history of Kennedy Tank. You are what, fourth generation?
Yes, I am. I'm fourth generation. Kennedy Tank was started by my great-grandfather, Patrick Washington Kennedy, in 1898. And at that time, we've been on the south side for 110 plus years. Initially, they were down around where Shapiro's is located, South Illinois there, 200 South Illinois, somewhere right around there. And then after, I don't know, not very long, maybe 5 or 10 years, they moved to, on Beecher Street, 1201 Beecher Street, which is near the Raymond Highway 65 exit, right in that general area, and stayed there until 1954, and now we've been at this current location at 833 East Sumner Avenue on the south side of Indianapolis since then.
Tell us in a few words what all you manufacture.
Today we are manufacturing storage tanks, pressure vessels, columns, heat exchangers. We also have a field arm that field erects large diameter tanks on our customer sites, and we repair and maintain boilers throughout the Midwest, typically coal-fired and natural gas boilers.
Well, in my years at the Spotlight newspaper, I was always aware of Kennedy Tank, and it's over there, but I really got attracted at one time when you transported a gigantic tank out of this place, heading for Tennessee or whatever. Talk a little about that particular one, if you can recall.
Well, the one that went to Tennessee actually went to Clarksville, Tennessee, and it was a large column. It was a distillation column. I won't get into all the details on that, but just to give you an idea of the size of that unit, weighed almost 400,000 pounds, and it was over 200 foot in length. And when you put the tractor trailer and the unit, it was more than a football field. And it was kind of interesting because the bridge down around Louisville was closed at the time, and a direct route would have been about 300 miles. It actually, because of that bridge being closed, had to go through Illinois and St. Louis and into Tennessee, and it went about 1,000 miles to go 300 miles.
That's almost like a military operation. What all is involved in that? There are professional movers. You don't do that yourself,
No,
do
we
you?
subcontract that, and like you said, it takes professionals. You've got police escorts. You've got bucket trucks for the wires, the telephone wires, and the electrical wires, and this kind of stuff. You really have, you've got to do your route surveys because you don't want to cave in bridges and roads and so on and so forth. So it's quite a job. It's quite a project, to say the least.
Well, in a little bit, Pat's going to give us the opportunity to go out into the manufacturing portion and really hands-on see what this is all about. But meanwhile, Pat Kennedy is also a published author. Ta-da! Pat has 2 books. One is Indy 500 Recaps, the short shoot edition. This book I have read the most of, and it really is a review of the 500s from what, 1911?
1911 on. All 96 races so far.
A little recap of each one and little side stories.
Yeah, and, I'd call it the Cliff Note version of each race.
That's good.
I don't know about you in high school or what have you, but I was a proponent of Cliff Notes at times, and that was really the idea of that particular book. For a lot of fans who have gone to a lot of races, the facts kind of mix. Was that 1972 or was that 1974 and this and that? And so it was kind of a bullet point summary of each race.
It's very interesting because I've attended many. The first race, I think, Maury Rose in 1948 or something. Of course, I was quite young, about 7 or 8, not really. But it's interesting to go through, and it's almost like, where were you when? And you read that, oh, I remember that, and I remember this episode, and what have you. The other one is, how much do you really know about the Indianapolis 500, the official trivia book? Now, talk a little about that.
Well, that, as we'll get into, this company sponsored race cars back in the 30s, 40s, 50s. And probably about 5 years ago, I really wanted to get the I's dotted and the T's crossed as far as the history of the Kennedy Tank Special. And I got with Donald Davidson and got with the Speedway, and I had a good feel for it, but really wanted to get it down. And so in my talks with Donald, he mentioned that he had a book out, and I'm a 500 buff, a passionate race fan, really. And so I got Donald's book, and I went through it, and I'm kind of anal in that when I go through these books, I highlight, and then after I finished it, and it's the best book out on the 500, I think.
Is there a greater authority than Donald Davidson?
Right. So I go through my highlights, and I started putting trivia questions together for my racing buddies. I was going to put 20, 30 questions just for fun, you know, when we were out and about, or at the flag room at the track, or what have you. And all of a sudden, 20 questions became 40, and 40 became 80, and all of a sudden I'm at 100 or 200, and I'm working on it about an hour a night, and my wife is like, "What in the heck are you doing?" And my point at the time, I didn't know I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just accumulating questions, and she actually said, "Well, maybe you should write a book, or make it into a book, or maybe you should some kind of a trivia game out at the track at the restaurant and bar where these people can play on the video screen, or something like that." So that's how it kind of happened. It was the trivia book was the first book, and then I got with I know Jeff Belskis, and I called him and asked if he would have lunch with me, and I wanted to present the idea. And
he's the president of.
He's the president of the Speedway. Yes.
Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
And Jeff, he liked the idea. He was kind of surprised that there wasn't a book out there like it, and which there wasn't. And so Donald worked with me, and did the editing and so on and so forth. And he helped me improve the book a bunch, because I'm not really a writer per se. But one interesting thing, after we had worked together quite a bit, one day he said, "Pat, I got something to tell you." And he was kind of serious, and I said, "Well, yeah, exactly." I was like, "Uh-oh," and he said, "I got to tell you, I'm jealous." And I said, "Donald, what are you jealous about?"
This is Donald Davidson?
Donald Davidson, yeah. And Donald said, "I'm jealous." And I said, "Well, what are you jealous about, Donald?" And he said, I'm jealous I didn't think of this idea." And I said, "Well, Donald, you could have done this in about 2 nights. It took me 2 years." But he was a great help.
Well, we can't leave the topic of the 500 without talking about this fully restored Kennedy Tank Special number 34?
34.
Talk about it.
Well, the car ran in the 1948 and 1949 500s. Les Anderson built the car, owned the car, drove the car in 48, and then in 49 he was having trouble getting it up to speed, and he at the last minute put Bill Cantrell, who was a hydroplane racer from I think Madison or Louisville, that area, in the car, and Cantrell got it in. Didn't have very high finishes, somewhere in the 21st, 22nd, somewhere in there in a range. So it wasn't a winning car by any means, but it was built out in Portland, Oregon by like, as I said, Les Anderson and some of his buddies, really. How it came about, us recovering the car, on that first book that I wrote, the trivia book, I put on the cover a picture in front of the pagoda of the car, my dad, and Les Anderson in the car. And probably Oh, the book had been out maybe 3 or 4 months, and I got a phone call, and a gruff voice on the other end says, "Hey, I think I know where your car is."
Oh, really?
And my first reaction was, "Well, I think my car's in the parking lot. What are you talking about?" And he said,
Now, what year was this?
Well, this was probably 2009, I think.
Okay.
Something like that. 2009, 2010. And the guy that I was speaking to was the former assistant curator of the museum. So he, at one point later on, he told me, "I know Donald Davidson knows the drivers, I know the cars." And anyway, he thought he knew where the car was. He said, "If I can find it, would you be interested in buying it?" And I said, "Probably would be, yeah." And so he found it, a collector over in Urbana, Ohio, a guy by the name of Bob McDonald, a big-time collector, IndyCar collector. He has a collection that really rivals the Speedways.
Really?
Not as many winners, but a lot of memorable cars you would remember through the years. Second place, third place, some winners as well. And so anyway, he got us together, Bob McConnell over in Urbana, Ohio, and us, and we made the deal and bought the car. It had run in, I didn't even know at the time, it had run in NASCAR. NASCAR had an open wheel series in 52, 53 range, and it had run in that series, and then it had run up on the northeast coast. And it had been modified some. It had
what condition when you found it?
It was, as a collector, they would say it was in pretty good condition. You and I would think that it was, not that great a condition. Yeah, but it had a Cadillac V8 engine in it. We had to find an Offie, so we had to find a 270 cubic inch 4-cylinder Offenhauser engine.
You still had the specs from the car when it was built?
Not the specs, but we knew what the engine was in it. A lot of the literature out at the Speedway had that, some of the detailed information as far as that went. So we hooked up with Hammer Art, Denny Jameson in Speedway, and Denny refurbished it. Now we got the car in December of that year, and it was 2010. And in May of 2011 was going to be the 100-year centennial, so we really hoped to have it ready so we could run it with the vintage cars for that. So in late January we hooked up with the refurbisher, and I had asked McConnell how long these refurbishments you typically take, and he said, well, they take 1 year to 2 years. Well, Denny came over and looked at the project, really liked it, and he did it in about 3.5 months.
Wow.
And did a great job. The car, I'm sure, looks better today than it probably did when it actually ran, but it cost a lot more, that's for sure.
Well, that's really something, and I admire you for your dedication, pardon me, to the race, and you're truly a fan of it. And obviously this is the masterpiece, and I suppose if somebody's going down the street on Sumner, if they want to come in and take a look at it in the lobby, they can do that?
Oh yeah, they're welcome to. We have visitors in really quite often. The word gets around about the car, and
that's great.
And so we've had people stop in, take pictures, get in the car, get pictures taken, so on and so forth. So
one final question before we go out and look at the manufacturing end. Have you ever driven this thing around the track?
Yeah, we've driven it, or I've driven it the last 2 years in conjunction with the race. This year we ran it on Thursday of race week, and as well as Saturday, driver's meeting day, the day before the race.
Is it fairly easy to handle? Is it? I mean, it's not your Cadillac with automatic and the windows up and down.
No, it's not. The first year, when I was taking around the corners at probably, I don't know, 80, 90 miles an hour, it kind of shimmied like that.
I see.
And on the straights, I probably got it up to 110, 115 at, I would guess, 70% throttle. It qualified at 128 average, so it probably can run 150 on the straights, or did back then. And anyway, when it shimmied like that, I kind of figured, you hear about, you listen to the racing today and they talk about the car set up, not being set up, and pushing and loose and all that. I figured we didn't have it set up right, and I was talking to some of the old drivers about it, and they said, well, that's the way it was, man.
The nature of the beast.
Get used to it, yeah.
get a little white knuckle and start shaking on you, did you?
Yeah, a few times going into that third turn when you get going a little hard, you hope you make it through. You'd hate to put it in the wall, that's for sure.
Well, I had a TR6 and a few years ago, went out there on the day they let everybody drive around the track, like 15 miles an hour. It's like kissing your sister. And I'm thinking, come on, turn us loose. But well, anyway, we're going to wrap up this portion. Stay with us. We're going out into the plant and see really how it's made. For now, hold on. Where do we start?
Well, it starts right over here, really. That's our plate roll. And as you can see, most of our stuff is cylindrical. So we take flat plate and roll it into cylinders.
Is it heated when you roll it?
Pardon me?
Is it heated when you roll it?
No, it's cold. It's a cold roll.
Boy, those presses must be something.
We can roll up to 3/4 inch thick on this roll. And now, when we get into thick items, like some of those vessels that you were talking about earlier, they might be 2 inches thick or 2.5 inches thick. We subcontract that rolling out, and then we get the cylinders brought in, and then we take it from there.
I can't imagine what kind of pressure it takes for 2 inch to bend.
Takes a lot.
Do they heat?
No, they're cold rolled. Takes a lot of force.
Now what's this? What is this going to be?
That's going to be a storage tank for chemicals. That tank actually goes down to Shelbyville to, I believe it's Yuma Industries. But just to give you an idea, that's a pretty good sized tank. Now this is a small little pressure vessel for Dow. So we work on big stuff, we work on small stuff. The shell down there is a heat exchanger for DUP, they make rendering equipment. And this is a Dow, this will be a Dow vessel here as well. And we've got 3 20-ton cranes, so we can lift 120,000 pounds here in this bay, which is pretty heavy stuff. We've got some big diameter, 14-foot diameter tanks going through. These all go to New York for a company that makes panels for building products. And I mentioned that 400,000 pound unit column. What we do on something like that is we make sections, because we can only lift 120,000 pounds in here. We'll make 2 or 3 sections, and then we will mate them. We'll bring in outside cranes and mate them to get the final unit.
Who sets the standard for putting these things together? I mean, is EPA, do they have certain standards you have to live up to, or just do your own engineering?
There are standard bodies. American Society of Mechanical Engineers, ASME, has standards for pressure vessels. The pressure vessels are probably the most dangerous units that we make because they hold pressure, some of them up to 3,000 pounds. You know, if you have a problem with a 3,000-pound vessel, well, you see it on TV every now and then at a refinery. You see a big fire or some, you know, a catastrophe. Through the years, when I got involved back in the late 70s, our average order was probably about $10,000. Now it's probably 40 or 50,000. Everything's getting bigger, more expensive. Back when I got started, a 10,000-gallon or a 15,000-gallon tank was pretty big. And now, like I mentioned, you know, 400,000 pounds, you know, everything's just getting bigger and bigger. And we've had to equip to that, bigger cranes, bigger handling, turning rolls, so on and so forth.
Such a specialized business. I mean, are there like a handful of people comparable to you in the country?
You know, we have these different product lines where there aren't that many that do everything we do. The heat exchangers, the pressure vessels, got the field arm. You know, there are people that makes tanks, and there are people that make pressure vessels, and there are people that make heat exchangers. There aren't that many that do the 4 or 5 different things that we do. So I think that does help. We think that's a strength for us.
Well, and your reputation, and people believe in the success stories from before, and so they think of you.
We've been around 112 years.
Wow.
And safety and quality are our two priorities, 1 and 1A. Yeah, that's a primer, and then that is actually a primer, and then there will be a second coat. A lot of times there will be 3 coats. Sometimes only primer. A lot of times 3 coats of paint, and we also do internal linings, where you actually get inside the vessel or tank and apply a compatible lining for whatever it's being held, typically chemicals.
What kind of kids are you looking for? Industrial engineer, people out of Purdue type of thing?
This is a pretty technical business. It's not brain surgery or anything like that, but yeah, the mechanical engineers. We're also looking for welders. The welding field is a great field to get into, in that the average age of the welder in our country today is like mid-50s.
Really?
And the retirement of that group, that is going to be tremendous in the next few years.
Not a very glorious occupation, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, I think that's the perception, but a lot has changed in that, you know, you think about welding and breathing smoke and so on and so forth. So much has changed from a safety standpoint that from a hygiene standpoint, it's much better than it has been for years.
I see.
And welders are very much in demand, and it's a really, for a kid who maybe has a technical aptitude but doesn't, you know, isn't schooling and books is not his thing so much. It's a great opportunity field.
The C9, do they provide people for you?
Yeah, and we work with them. We provide material for them to work on, scrap material.
Interns occasionally?
And yeah, we've got some C9 graduates.
Well, on this note, we're going to wrap this up because we've run out of space and time, Pat. I really appreciate you taking the time. You're a busy guy. You got all these things going on. Why should you monkey around with the 2 of us? But
yeah, we always like to have our friends come in.
Well,
and, you've been a good friend for a long time.
Thank you very much. And the feeling is mutual. And on behalf of myself and Kent John, our videoer, our editor, our producer, this concludes another issue of Coz's Corner Video. Thanks for watching. See you the next time.